So good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Sergeant Ken Lattin. I'm the spokesperson for the Kennewick Police Department, and currently I'm also the spokesperson for SIU, which is the Special Investigations Unit here in the Tri-Cities. In law enforcement, we have to be very flexible, and I want you to know that at the request of Chief Pasco Police Chief Bob Metzger, asked us if we would take on the role of the spokesperson for SIU during this investigation. And so this is a very important time in our community. And so I want you to know my plate has been completely cleared of all other responsibilities. And for those of you that are local, you know I wear a lot of different hats. I am the spokesperson from this point forward as long as is needed. So today we are going to, first of all, I want to explain SIU, what they're all about. Their role is to investigate officer-involved incidents in both counties, Benton and Franklin counties, that involve great bodily injury or death. Their purpose, their mission, is to investigate in a way that's unbiased, has the appearance and reality of both a thorough, fair, complete, and professional investigation. That's important to the community. We serve the community, so we should give them this sort of investigation. SIU hasn't been around forever. They were formed in late 2010, and since that time they've performed 11 investigations. This is actually the 11th officer-involved investigation that they've worked on. It's important to know, because it is unbiased, we are separate, that the commander, police commander, in this case, this happens to be our case, our police commander, has sole authority over this. It's important for the public to know that this is separate from Pasco. Although Pasco is a member of SIU, their detectives, their investigators, their command staff are not a part of this investigation. It is an impartial investigation made up of the following agencies. Kennewick is involved in this one, obviously, Richland Police, Benton County Sheriff, Franklin County Sheriff, and of course we use the resources with the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab. Today's briefing, our first one, and we'll have more as this case progresses. But I first of all want to explain a few things. What's the difference between a criminal and an administrative investigation? I want to make sure I lay out the ground rules, what we can and can't comment on that might jeopardize the investigation, what we've done so far, what we're going to be doing in the future, what the public can do, most importantly, how the public can contact us through the hotline that's been set up, and what do we know so far? What can we comment on that we know so far? So first of all, what's the difference between a criminal investigation and an administrative investigation? So the criminal investigation is what SIU does. This is no different than any other homicide investigation. If it was involving two citizens, two strangers, or a domestic violence homicide, we handle this in the same manner as that. This is a death at the hands of another person. In this case, law enforcement officers. They will handle it and investigate it in that way. An administrative investigation is that internal investigation. We commonly refer to that as internal affairs. They will do their own administrative review of their policy and procedures and actions of their officers. While these two investigations happen at the same time, they are separate. They are not doing these investigations together. That is why SIU is important. They are doing it separately, but at the same time. As with any homicide investigation, we have to be careful what we talk about doesn't jeopardize the investigation, doesn't interfere with the integrity. We don't say things that might potentially taint a jury pool in the future. So we will release information involved in the case in a way that's proper and prudent, so we don't jeopardize any future parts of this investigation. We're not going to be able to talk about the analysis. I know you recently got a press release from the coroner stating that the autopsy was complete today. There's no analysis there. We can't comment on that yet. That is at a later stage in this investigation. But what we can talk about is what we're doing, what we're going to be doing in the future, and provide you a timeline for how we're going to continue to release information, because that is important. Here's what we've done so far. So at the scene, the Washington State Patrol, their crime scene team that travels throughout the state, they came. They used their 3D scan to basically document the scene. It's a pretty impressive bit of technology that they can capture all that and then recreate it for a later time in a 3D fashion, not just a two-dimensional drawing. Witness interviews have already begun of all the citizens that were out there and witnessed this case. Of course, the forensic crime scene photographs, collection of forensic evidence at the scene there in Pasco. Of course, the autopsy was performed earlier today with the Franklin County coroner and the medical examiner. The hotline, very important, and I really want to emphasize, this line goes directly to the SIU. This is not ringing into Pasco City Hall or Pasco Police Department. This is ringing in directly to the outside agencies, the agencies involved with the Special Investigations Unit. Also, what's been completed so far, and this is typical protocol, they'll collect all of the officers' gear: uniform, belt, guns, tasers, shoes, boots, everything is collected. It's all part of the evidence. Social media. Of course, this is one of those cases where there was a lot of this happened at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in a busy intersection. There's a lot of video out there. And so the investigators want to use that as well. And so they are reviewing social media, and they have interviewed the non-involved officers that were responding to the scene. What's next? There is dash cam video. That'll be reviewed and collected for further analysis. Obviously the radio traffic. The officers are both the initial dispatch of the call, the officers that were responding, the 3 that were involved, other responding agencies that were coming. All that's recorded at the Franklin County Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center. That'll be collected for analysis. MDT, that's the mobile data terminals, the computers in the cars. We want to make sure we know before, during, after, immediately after the situation, what may have been messaged. That's important information. Again, we're collecting everything. We want to know everything. We're going to continue to interview witnesses. About 40 so far, citizen witnesses. Of course, that number is growing with that hotline, and they're already collecting a lot of data, a lot of information. People are calling in with information, so that number continues to grow, moving target. But at least 40 so far that have been identified. Of course, when all this is done, and it takes some time, the complete report then, with all the facts, is turned over to the Franklin County Prosecutor for further review. It's important to note, SIU, Special Investigations Unit, does not make judgments, does not make recommendations. They are simply fact finders. They collect all the data, all the information, all of the evidence, present it in a logical format to be reviewed later by legal counsel. Again, important to note, SIU, the hotline, this is what the public can do. If you saw something, if you heard something, if you know something, call. Those things are important. We want to know. We need a complete picture. All we know, all of us here in this room, is what we've seen on those videos that were posted on social media. That doesn't tell us the whole story. It'd be great if it did. It doesn't. We need to know more information. People who were eyewitnesses, who saw, who heard things. Those are what's really going to tell the whole picture for us. Another bit of information. Please, what can the public do? Respect the rights of others. Everybody's going to disagree. They're all going to have their own opinions about this, okay? Our Constitution allows for people to gather, to demonstrate, to protest, and that is perfectly okay. That is what we do as law enforcement officers. We protect your rights to do that. And I know Pasco is going to help them with their protest march tomorrow, because that is an important part of our system of government. But please be respectful of other people's differing views, of other people's personal property, and of course of people's safety. Express your views, but be respectful of others. That's all that we can ask here. This case, we decided on the facts. Trust the process. It doesn't happen. This is not your favorite crime scene show on TV that's solved in 60 minutes. This can take weeks and even sometimes months before we collect all the information, get all the information back from the state crime lab, that forensic information that is critical to know who did what, when. We have to be able to answer all those questions. So you have to trust the process and know that it does take a little bit of time. What do we know so far? Antonio Zambrano-Montes was not armed with a gun or a knife. We all know, based on the videos we've watched on social media, that he did at one point at least have a rock in his hand and threw that rock. The investigation continues on whether he was armed. with a rock at the time that he was shot. That is still an ongoing investigation. That's why those videos are so important. They will be able to, with the use of some of our partnerships with other agencies, to analyze that information more closely. See better than what we can see on our phones or on our personal computers on that raw video. I do want to keep you updated each time. This is obviously a tentative date, but next Thursday, 1:30 here at the Kennewick Police Department, we plan to do another briefing. We hope to have more information. Now, if something breaking news happens in between, we're not going to wait until that. But I will try and have more information to release at that time. And of course, you'll have my contact information. I am the sole point of contact on this, and you can contact me in between. You don't have to wait till Thursday if you have a question. We will try and have information as it comes forward, but put this on your calendar. I want to close with this before I take any questions and then turn it over to Franklin County Prosecutor. This is who we are. Now, our commander is responsible for this investigation. It's his turn in the hopper to be responsible for it, and I've been assigned spokesperson. So we are the City of Kennewick, we are the Kennewick Police Department. I want you to know who we are. And this is on our website, the city's website. These are important things. Obviously, the last thing there, communication. That's my role. My role is to communicate, engage in open and honest communication. But we believe in integrity, inclusiveness, and stewardship, which means you're responsible to the citizens. And you have to understand that there will be a lot of people to review this case moving forward. For the prosecutor, obviously, the coroner, if he chooses to do an inquest, coroner's inquest, there's a potential for the state's attorney general to review it. There is a potential for the federal government, the FBI, to come in, the Department of Justice come in and review it. That's why we are going to create an unbiased and factual report that does not cover up any information, because our jobs are on the line here as well. We are not going to put something in there that's not truthful, it's not accurate, to cover up for somebody. Those officers, just as I do and any other officer that puts a badge on, we go to work, we got to make decisions every day, and you have to live by those decisions. Those three officers are going to have to live by their decisions. Was it what they did right, or was it wrong? That'll come out later on. But they are going to have to live by those decisions. So with that, I didn't include Franklin County Prosecutor Shawn Sant in the original press announcement. I wasn't sure based on his schedule if he could be here, but he is. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to him, and then we'll entertain some questions to wrap things up.
Thank you, Sergeant Lattin. I'm Shawn Sant, Franklin County Prosecutor, and we are also a part of the SIU team. Wherever an incident occurs, that jurisdiction's prosecutor's office is part of that review process. We will await, once the SIU completes their investigation, the process that we have in place will give us the opportunity to review all of that information. That will include reports from the Washington State Patrol. As Sergeant Lattin mentioned, that a crime team came down from the Washington State Patrol. They're experts at reconstruction. We rely heavily on their expertise and value their participation in SIU. Again, they're just one of the many member law enforcement agencies that participate in helping us gather as much information as possible so we have a complete investigation. So as he had indicated earlier, the Pasco Police Department is not actively involved in the investigation. They're provided updates. They get updates from the SIU unit, and I think that's important. Obviously, it's just as important to keep the members of the general public informed as to what we are doing in this process. As far as our office, I have informed the Attorney General's office, which in turn informed the Governor's office. They're keeping them apprised of the investigation. Other agencies throughout the state do things a little bit differently. Larger size agencies, they might investigate these type of cases by themselves. We felt that it was important back in the end of 2010 going into 2011 that having this special investigations unit is key for getting the best of our area investigators to be a part of an investigation like this. So it removes the involved agency out of it. And so that's what we want to see. We want to make sure that we have all of that information available to us to ultimately make a decision. I did receive, in furtherance of advising the media, I did receive an update from our coroner. As many of you know, the autopsy took place this morning. I believe it could even still be going on. But the release that I did receive from Dan Blaisdell, he's the elected coroner of Franklin County, That release shows that, and this is his email that he sent to me, so these are his words. As a result of the autopsy that was performed today on the deceased that was shot by Pasco police on Tuesday evening, the cause of death, gunshot wounds to the torso, the manner of death is homicide. The definition of homicide is a person dies at the hand of another person. This determination in no way suggests that it was justified or not. The case is still under investigation by the SIU team, and no other details will be released by the coroner's office at this time. Signed, Dan Blaisdell. So we will attempt to do what we can and share information. I think the most important part is just sharing the process of the investigation. As Sergeant Lattin indicated, by releasing certain information piecemeal has the tendency to jeopardize perhaps with these witnesses and witnesses that are yet to be identified. I think it's equally important to make sure that we don't taint anybody's information one way or the other. But we want to make sure that we receive those independent witness accounts from this investigation. As has been conducted in other SIU cases, our office does receive and review all of that information. I typically review this with a team of prosecutors in my office. We evaluate, and sometimes there's a need for additional follow-up. So we will be in continued communication with the SIU unit if there's something that we feel is left unanswered. And we think that additional information could be gathered either from the State Patrol or the SIU investigation specifically. We will certainly reach out to them and try to get that information. The most important thing for us in our office is to make sure that we're not making decisions without a complete picture. And I recognize out there, obviously, initial video that's been posted, social media content. We're certainly going to look and consider video. Video, like every other piece of evidence, is valuable in an investigation and ultimately in any decision that may come from our office. So obviously, if there are people out there, I would like them to utilize that hotline that has been set up, that was mentioned, and please come forward. Sometimes people think that they really don't have anything to add, but sometimes it's the little pieces that really do make a difference. And I think, in fairness to this investigation, even if they think that it's something little, please share it. Let the SIU unit gather that information, follow up with it if it needs additional follow-up, because certainly for my office, I want to make sure that I have all the information that's out there and available. And of course, every witness should be important in that investigation, and we'll have to evaluate that once we have the complete reports. So thank you very much for attending this afternoon. As we anticipated, there'll probably be other briefings. I don't know if our office will be a part of that. We'll certainly try to make ourselves available, but ultimately we're going to be awaiting for the final reports to come to our office and begin that review process. And I think we'll certainly advise the media once we have received that information, so that the media is aware that that's where we are.
Sergeant Lattin, do you feel I think there's some concern about local law enforcement investigating the shooting. You guys feel the need to bring in an outside agency to investigate this?
We are the best at investigating any sort of crime, and we handle this just like we would any other homicide, to hold people accountable. In this case, do the officers need to be held accountable? We will collect those facts, the prosecutor to review, to determine if there needs to be accountability there. Our federal partners at the FBI, Department of Justice, are always available. I can tell you that we have been in contact, and at this point they are letting this investigation continue, but we always welcome the assistance from our federal partners.
Let me see if I understand you clear. The SIU is doing the complete investigation is going to the federal prosecutor, Shawn Sant, and the buck stops with Mr. Sant and making the decision if this was justified or unjustified shooting?
That's correct.
So you will have the final say so if this was justified or not justified to shoot Mr. Zambrano.
That's correct.
Shawn, earlier the court, we talked to Blaisdell, and he said that he will call for that inquest. Are you going to abide by the decision by the jury? I know that it's kind of on your own accord. You can decide to.
Well, let's back up a little bit. I think the coroner, when he made his statement, that's certainly an option. There's a lot of different options out there, and the coroner's inquest is one of those. Obviously, we don't want to, this is big news in our community as well. It's affected a lot of lot of people in our area, but especially in our county. So we're going to have to be cautious. If it does look like we are going to an inquest, we'd probably be a little bit more cautious on details that would be released. But the advantage of that would be is that you will get an opportunity to hear those details come out in the inquest after a jury panel is impaneled, and that we've been able to see jurors that we feel could be fair and impartial, just like any other trial.
Now, neither of you were directly in Pasco, but with these rallies coming up, it sounds like people might be coming from across the state, if not across the Pacific Northwest, for these rallies. Do you guys have any specific message for the community this upcoming weekend?
As we mentioned up here in the previous slide, be respectful. You certainly have your right to protest and to demonstrate, and that's founded in the Constitution. I mean, our country is founded on that. And I know the Pasco Police is prepared to help facilitate that, to close streets, to make sure that everybody can do it safely. Be respectful of others, their person, their property. That's all that we ask. Demonstrate. That's your right to do that, but just be respectful.
How far along in the investigation process are you guys, and how long do you think this will take?
You know, a lot of it has to do with how many witnesses. I mean, that number, obviously I said there's at least 40, and that number is growing. Those all take time, because those are not just, we talk to you on the phone and see what you have to say. These are in person, they're recorded, and then transcribed. So those things take time, and so that can really drive it. The other part of it is the forensic evidence is sent off to the crime lab. That doesn't happen either quickly like you normally see on the fictional TV shows. It takes a while for the crime lab to process that evidence, so it could be several weeks.
Obviously in the early stages, but are you guys just still interviewing witnesses then? Is that where the investigation's at right now?
That is what some of the investigators are doing. That's a big part of it. Other parts are still that collection of evidence, packaging it, processing it, getting it ready to send off to the crime lab.
How many investigators are involved? Do you know a number?
So initially there was 15 involved, and that includes the technicians from the Washington State Crime Lab. As they get through the witnesses, that's the big driving manpower number now. As they get through those, it might be fewer detectives that are assigned to it.
You know how many of the 40 identified witnesses have been?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You know how many of the witnesses have actually been talked with investigators yet?
I don't. That's what, again, so I'll get a briefing from SIU next week when they all come together and we collect that kind of information, and I'll hopefully have, by the end of next week, more information for you on that kind of topics.
Shawn, going back to this inquest thing, when I talked to Blaisdell earlier, he told me that he had decided to go ahead with the inquest. He wasn't thinking about it anymore. That was his decision. But did you mean to say that that call can't officially be made until after the investigation is over? Or when can it be made, and by who?
He can make that decision, and that is his right as an elected official, the county coroner. But we really couldn't hold an inquest without all the information from SIU. There's no questions to be asked. There's no evidence to be presented until that investigation is complete.
And that'd be one of the difficulties of if the coroner calls the inquest, that's fine. It puts us on notice that this is the process, the proceeding that's going to happen. When that would happen, that's really dependent on when we'd get the evidence back. Typically, evidence sent off to the crime lab, it takes several weeks. Obviously, they recognize the importance of this case, and I'm sure, as with most officer-involved shootings, it does get a priority status in the crime lab, but it does take time, because again, we want to make sure that we have accurate information. And in a case like this, I don't even know how many pieces of evidence are going to be sent off to the lab, but the more pieces of evidence that do get sent off for evaluation, again, that'll take time to process those. So before the inquest takes place, we're going to have to be prepared just like we would on any other case. We wouldn't want to just jump into it just to say, hey, let's satisfy the coroner's inquest. I think the public would demand that, hey, we're doing our best at presenting the evidence, and that would be my goal, whether we're in trial or an inquest or release of information otherwise, as we have done in the past with SIU, the evaluations.
So he hasn't officially informed you of his decision yet?
He has not. The last I heard, that was just something, frankly, I think that was a comment to the media that was something of consideration. And again, that's the coroner's prerogative. If he chooses to go with that route, that's his call, and we'll certainly be prepared to go forward with that. But we would need time to gather all the evidence that we would need.
What is the status of the officers that were involved in the shooting? How many are officially under investigation?
I can't comment on that. I don't know. I think that was something that might have been addressed by Chief Metzger of Pasco. I don't know.
So there are 3 involved, and they are all currently on administrative leave.
Is that administrative with pay or without pay? Do you know?
With pay.
With pay.
Sergeant, you have a situation where we have police investigating police. How confident are you that you can conduct an investigation that the public will believe is unbiased?
Well, I hope that we've built trust. We've put those credits in there in the past. We are the best at investigating deaths, homicides. And if not us, then who would investigate? And there's nobody else that's qualified to investigate homicides than law enforcement. And whether that's us or it ends up being the FBI, if they decide to come in, it's still law enforcement. And we are partners, and we would completely share with them and work with them on that. But there is no one else to investigate homicides. And that's what this is. This is a homicide. Is it justified or not justified? That's what will come out through the prosecutor's office.
Is the FBI involved at this point, or are you simply keeping in touch with them?
Yeah, so as I spoke earlier, they have been in contact with us, and they haven't told us that they are going to take it over. They could, but right now it's just informal communication.
What's the feeling among?
Oh, go ahead. I think you.
What's the thank you? What's the feeling among the officers on the streets right now? Because when we were at one of the rallies the other night, we saw groups of people going towards the officers, cursing at them, yelling at them. Is there kind of a sense of fear?
It's a stressful time for anybody that wears a badge, and it was a stressful time just based on the national events that have been occurring over the past year. And so this just brings it a little closer to home for us, absolutely. We're going to continue to go ahead and do our job with honesty and integrity, being fair and firm, holding people accountable, but doing it in an ethical way.
Shawn, if you determine that the shooting was not justified, maybe talk a little bit about potential charges that the officers could be facing?
I couldn't really comment on that again without, I'd be simply speculating. Obviously, a person is dead, and so any charges relating to that would come. But again, I'd hate to speculate as what specific charges might apply, because as you mentioned, there's 3 different officers involved. As we would look at any case, we'd want to look at what were the particularized actions of each of those officers, and we really couldn't make that determination at this early stage, especially since we haven't seen the evidence.
Ken, I see that in your investigation, on your report, you used the telephone number for witnesses to call in. But I've been approached by various Hispanics in the community saying that the investigating team or detectives are calling them and telling them to stop posting the videos on social media. They're being threatened that they're going to get arrested, and it's by detectives from the investigation team. What can you clarify on that?
So I know of at least one in Kennewick of a threat that was made on social media that we investigated as a threat. So I think people are welcome to post on social media. Don't make threats. You can't do that. Whether you're making a threat towards a law enforcement officer, you're making a threat towards another citizen who has a different view than you. We will have to investigate.
No, I think you misunderstood the question. That someone from the detective team are telling the community not to be posting these videos on social media.
My recommendation would be, I don't know that the videos help at this point. Certainly share them with investigators, but the public has every right to post on social media. So
you're trying to silence the community from not posting?
No, don't put words in my mouth. I'm saying that it would be better if we didn't inflame the community with videos that might do that, but I'm saying that everybody has the right to do that. It would be better to share, we want to share everything with the investigators that might be helpful evidence. But please, as you think about what you want to say in the community, what you want to do or post on social media, keep in mind that we don't want to make the situation worse. It's bad right now. It can get worse. And so if you do things, if you take actions that will further inflame the situation, it's not helpful. So think about what you can do to be actually helpful in the situation.
Sergeant Lattin, in one of the videos you can see where the officers handcuff the suspect once he's down on the ground after he's been shot. Is that police policy?
Yes. Yeah, we would always secure and then render aid at that point.
How critical will the videos be to the SIU investigation?
Those are very critical. I've seen a couple, and both of them are very good video. Obviously, there's probably more. There's a lot of people out there, but those are critical, and we will be able to analyze those further enhance them, slow them down, so we can really see what was happening. At full speed, it's hard to really tell, make a judgment.
I'm sorry, how many videos did you say you've collected so far?
I don't know how many they've collected. I've seen at least 2 on YouTube that were out there, posted immediately, but I'm sure there's probably more. Again, we'll try and have better answers for that next week.
like you said, it was a large, crowded area. In your investigation, are you looking to whether guilt or not guilty for, I guess you make recommendations in terms of guilt or not guilty for?
We don't make recommendations.
Not recommendations, okay. Well,
we just simply collect the facts and we turn them over to the prosecutor.
The prosecutor makes the decision, understood. But is there any way where these officers might be reprimanded for perhaps firing in a large crowded area rather than going all the way towards charging them with, say, murder?
So in earlier slides we talked about criminal investigation versus the administrative investigation. And so some of that, as you're talking about, would fall under the administrative investigation, which is conducted by their internal affairs, as far as did the officers follow the rules, the protocols, the regulations of the Pasco Police Department. That's where it wasn't appropriate, based on this scenario, in a crowded area to fire their weapon. So those are the kind of things they look at.
If in fact an inquest is called, and you know, with all the attention this is getting, will it be difficult to find a jury that's unbiased and kind of removed from the situation?
Well, we've had other large profile cases before. I think every homicide really gets a lot of attention in our community. I mean, we're not that large of a community. Obviously, with national attention, it's on multiple media outlets, so I guess that does make the exposure a lot more likely that potential jurors. But what we've typically done is we do a juror questionnaire, and that's basically asking the jurors, hey, have you heard about this case? Just because someone has heard about it doesn't necessarily mean that they'd be booted off the consideration for a jury, but certainly that might create some follow-up questions, and frankly that could prolong the process because we don't want to have them answering questions exactly what they think they saw or whatever evidence of the case they believe that they have. Typically we do that one by one. They come into open proceeding and they share with in open court essentially of what they have, what knowledge do they have. And sometimes you can't ask all the questions in a written questionnaire, but what that does is it starts a conversation with the jurors, and it really, what we look for in any jury pool is, does the person feel that they could render a fair and unbiased decision for either party? You know, that's both for the law enforcement, it's for the person that was killed. It's an important part of that evaluation to make sure people could, you know, put aside things and weigh just the information that they hear at that proceeding. Similar to a trial, can you make a decision based on the evidence you hear in that trial or in that proceeding? We'd certainly seek to do that. And that's why I said we'd use caution if the decision is made by the coroner to go forward with that. But we'd certainly want to limit the amount of details we release prior to that so we don't end up losing a jury pool in our county.
Will there be any holistic look at the Pasco Police Department regarding previous happenings, you know, previous shootings, given the state of this case and the interest in this case? I realize those have gone through their process, but given the whole and the total of the sum of those instances, is there going to be any look over the whole thing?
If you're asking from our office's perspective, we've thoroughly vetted and evaluated the prior cases that we had, the prior officer-involved shootings. We've looked at those, and we feel that that was a thorough investigation. I don't think the actions of any officers involved with this incident would question that investigation. I don't think there was any issues of any integrity of the investigation. Again, that's the benefit of reaching out to our other area law enforcement agencies, pulling out the involved agency, removing Pasco from participation in the investigation itself, so that way it's relied upon with the other area experts. And now if there's an internal or administrative review, that might be something up to the city of Pasco, the police chief. I think when the chief mentioned in his news brief that they would be looking at policies. Of course, policies are something that do change. We never, you know, we don't stay with the same policies from the 70s. Things change, and perhaps as officers learn different things, they might change policy for that. I don't know.
Police experts that public radio has interviewed have said that this situation looks like old training. It looks like not current training for these types of situations. That LAPD, other bigger cities are using different methods to kind of understand this kind of a situation on the ground. What do you have? I mean, is there going to be any look at Pasco PD in a greater sense, as if their training is up to date and if their protocols are the most the best that they can be?
That would be a great question for Chief Metzger, because really each of the chiefs, even though they meet together, they speak together, they work together, each department has its own policies, and so I'd feel more comfortable having that question directly asked at him. Obviously, we want the best law enforcement out there, because that makes it easier for our office, having trained officers, and it makes it easier, I think, for the community to have the faith in the law enforcement that we do have. So, I mean, it's a great question, but I think it'd be more appropriate for Chief Metzger.
In the video, Ken, the body's laying on the ground, the 3 or 4 officers are over the body, and it assumes like he's dead, and they handcuff the body. Is that policy to handcuff someone that's been shot?
So our procedure would be to secure the person, maybe handcuffs, and then render aid. I don't know, that'll be part of what comes out in the investigation, exactly what sort of aid was rendered.
Follow up on public radio's question. Would there be any recommendation coming from the SIU investigation as far as a policy or a way that things could have been done better? It's strictly facts.
The SIU is simply fact finders. They are investigators that will collect all of the facts and present them as they are. Not making any recommendations, not rendering any opinions on that. Then we become biased at that point. So we got to remain unbiased.
Sergeant Lattin, are you guys worried about any backlash from the community following the shooting, and are officers doing any extra steps to be precautionary areas that, make traffic stops or encounter people while they're out in the field?
So 90% of our community, good people, support us. They continue to tell us they support us in all the cities in both counties. As always, we try to be vigilant, watch out for each other, because there is that small population out there that looks for opportunities. They do not like law enforcement, they don't like government, period. And so they look forward to these sort of situations, these opportunities to lash out in place. So we are being careful, watching out for each other, just to make sure that 1 or 2% of the population doesn't try and seize on an opportunity to hurt somebody.
No extra steps or anything like that?
Are you guys bringing in any additional officers from any other cities or anything to help out tomorrow for the rally?
So I know there's been a lot of talk amongst all the agencies about be prepared for that. Right now everything looks like it's going to be a very peaceful demonstration. It sounds like Pasco is going to have most all of their officers working. And of course here in Kennewick and Richland, Benton County, Franklin County, we all have plans in place that should they need assistance, this is what we'll come over there and provide. So those details, those decisions have already been made. If they need assistance, we will, as the other agencies, will provide them assistance over there. But we don't
for right now, it's just Pasco.
Just Pasco.
Right? Okay.
You had a question in the back.
From Pasco, we have a rally like you were talking for tomorrow, and my question to you will be, there'll be several speakers at the rally, and I was wondering if would you be willing to send someone to speak on behalf of this presentation or update that you've done today? Is that something that you would consider?
So I appreciate that invitation, and we'll certainly take that into consideration. I'll check with my boss.
Okay.
I appreciate the invitation.
It has to be decided
okay.
Really quick.
Yep. So make sure you give me your contact information before you leave. Okay.
Ken, just one last question I have concerning the family. Is the family able to be part of the investigation? Are you getting any information from the family? Do they have any rights to inquiry, any information, or anybody can need?
So what I've heard from Pasco is they have been meeting with the family quite frequently, and they will provide them as much information as they can. From what I've understood, the family has been cooperative with the SIU as far as learning about the time leading up to the incident. So all those things are very valuable. It helps us paint a full picture of what happened and why it happened.
Prosecutor Sant, how are you feeling having, I guess, so many eyes on you now and having to kind of make that decision coming up, probably not anytime too soon, but having, kind of that added pressure in your decision?
Good question. I think really just like every other case, I think any case of this magnitude, when someone loses their life, I think it's just as important. Obviously, the heightened public scrutiny when officers are involved, obviously we're going to be just as careful, but I don't think it really changes the process that we do internally in our office. We're going to be looking for the same facts. We're going to be looking for every piece of evidence to see what it adds up to in the end. And I think we're really going to follow. We're not changing anything. We're going to review that evidence. Obviously, if a coroner's inquest is sought by the coroner, that'll be a little bit different process, but frankly, it'll be the same review process that we do. We'd just simply be doing it through the proceeding of a coroner's inquest. So, good question, but really the process and analysis of whether or not we charge a crime, even for the lower level felonies, we try to look and evaluate at all pieces of those the evidence before we make a charging decision. It's something we take very serious.
I think that I spoke on it earlier. The officers made decisions, right or wrong, we'll find out, but they have to live with those decisions. And that is, just because they're a police officer is not going to change how we investigate this. We will find out the truth, and we will report it. Mr. Sant will make a decision. It doesn't matter that they wear a badge.
Last inquest question, sorry. Do you remember the last time that you dealt with an inquest jury, and did you take their recommendation into consideration, or did you go with what their decision was?
An inquest, I think, as Mr. Blaisdell indicates, actually quite rare proceeding. I haven't participated in one personally.
Okay.
We haven't had one since I've taken office since 2011.
Okay.
So certainly our coroner has participated in the inquest. I believe he was the one that presided over the case in Walla Walla. And so he's well experienced at handling inquest, and we'll certainly welcome that if that's what the choice is.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you all so much for being here.